Welcome to Part 4, Smart Property Designs Limited. We will be continuing with Task 8. Okay, so let's have a look and see what we need to do. Okay, we're now going to enter receipts that have been received from customers. Okay, so our customers have started to pay us now, and we need to post those receipts to Sage. You may remember that I said earlier in the module that when we receive or pay money, we need to enter that through the bank function in Sage. So whenever we receive or pay money, we need to go to bank. So if we select the bank function on the left, okay, what we need to do now is we need to select the customer button within the bank account toolbar. Now the reason that we're doing this and not selecting the receipt button is because we need to allocate these receipts to our customer ledger. So effectively we need to link the bank account with the customer ledger so that we can allocate the receipts that we've received from customers to the invoices that we have just already entered. Okay, so if I select the customer button, you'll see here that the customer receipt bank current account screen comes up. And you'll note that it's split into 3 sections. Okay, we have the bank details section. Now this is where we select the bank account that we want the monies received to be entered to. Okay, now we've chosen the bank current account, which is fine, so we don't need to change that. But if we wanted to enter it to a different account, we may well want to choose the drop down button here, and we could select a different bank account. For example, if we actually wanted to post the money to petty cash, we could select petty cash. But we're not doing that at the moment, so we can just cancel that and leave it as the account reference as 1200, so that's okay. So now let's have a look at the next section, which is customer details. Now you'll note that when we opened the customer receipt bank current account screen, the cursor actually defaulted here to the customer account. Now this is where we need to select the customer account that we're going to allocate the receipt to. So if we have a look at the question and just see who is paying us, okay, we can see it's Mr. Jackson. Okay, so we need to find the customer account for Mr. Jackson. If we go back to Sage, we can do 2 things. We can just enter J, okay, and that brings up all the account references that begin with J. So in our case, we only have 1, so it brings up Mr. Jackson straight away. Alternatively, you could again use the drop down key here, and that would bring up all your customer accounts. I'm just going to enter J, that brings up Mr. Jackson, okay. And I'm now going to move to the 3rd section, which is the receipts section. Okay, so we're coming into the receipts section. Now the details that we need here are the date. So again, if I go back to the question, and let's just find the date that the monies were received. So it's the date that we receive the monies that we need to enter here, which is the 8th of April. So I'm now just going to enter the date 8th of April 2013. Now what you want to do is bring the cursor down into the reference section. Okay, into the reference section. So we want to come into this box here. Leave the amount as 0 for now. because we don't want to enter anything in the amount box. This would only be used in the case of a customer possibly making a payment on account or a deposit where there was no invoice already posted for it to be allocated. But we have invoices posted down here, so we're going to allocate this receipt to an invoice, so we don't want to enter anything in this box. So we come down to the reference section. We now need to enter a reference. Now this is important in the sense that it helps you to identify the transaction when you're doing your bank reconciliation. Now most payments and receipts nowadays are done via electronic transfer, so you might have a particular reference from that which you can tie up with the bank statement that you receive from your bank. What we're going to do is we're going to use what's called a paying in reference receipt, and this is effectively when you open a bank account you may be given a paying in book. Now this paying in book will have slips, so just like a checkbook, the paying in slips each have a unique reference number. Okay, so you can use this for paying in cash or checks. So this is the reference that the bank will then put onto your bank statement when to show that that the monies have been put into the bank account. So we're going to enter this reference onto Sage so we can then tie it up with the bank statement when we do our bank reconciliation. Okay. Okay, having entered the reference, we then want to come down into the second part here and allocate our receipt. So just to expand on that, if I just draw a line across, we can see this top part here relates to the bank, and this part down here actually relates to our customer ledger. So you can see here, these are the sales invoices and sales credit notes that we entered to our customer ledger earlier. Okay, and we've got our Sage unique transaction reference number here down at the side. We've got our invoice numbers that we entered, invoice number and our credit note number that we entered earlier, and the details that we gave to each transaction. So what we need to do is we need to look for the invoice that this customer is paying. So again, if we look at the details we've been given, now when you're working in an office, what you should receive is a remittance slip from your customer. Okay, so they will send you a remittance, and that will tell you how much they've paid and what invoices they're paying, so you can then allocate that. Okay, so we've been told that they're going to pay invoice 6789. So we want to look for 6789, and the amount that they've paid is £6,870. Right. So let's have a look here. There we go. Okay, we've got 6789 as the first one, and in fact it looks like they're paying us in full, so it's not a part payment. So what we want to do is we want to come over here to the receipt column. Okay, so we want to come into this column here, receipt, and in this cell we want to enter the full amount, 6870. Okay, so if we put the cursor into this cell here, now as they're paying in full, what we can do is we can actually come down, and you'll see here there's a button Pay in Full. So we can just select this button here. Okay. Right, and you'll notice that what's happened is as we've entered the amount into this cell, this amount has been automatically populated. So we don't need to worry about that there, that's already been done. If they were making a part payment and they hadn't paid in full, we would need to enter the amount manually. So for example, they'd only paid us £5,000, we would need to enter 5,000. That would need to be typed in manually. But as they've paid in full, we can just use the Pay in Full button to enter that amount. Okay, now just before you save, check all your details are correct. The date, the amount, the reference, the bank account, which is extremely important, otherwise you'll have problems reconciling at the end of the month. So, okay, once all details have been checked, you then just need to save. Okay, now just to show you how that impacts on the ledger, if we go now to the customer account, so if we go to customers, you may need to change the view. Okay, let's highlight Jackson. We're going to have a look at the Jackson account. Now you can already see here that the balance has changed, okay? They now owe us less money. If we highlight that account and just select the activity button here, we can have a look and see what has actually been happening within the customer account itself. Okay, again you'll see these unique Sage transaction numbers. So you might remember just from when we were entering the receipt to the account through the bank, the Sage transaction number was 26. You'll see it's the same here. Now that will be the same for this transaction all the way through Sage. So you can always track this first transaction here via its transaction number 26. As for all the others. Okay, so let's just, we'll notice here, so we have our invoice 6789. Okay, so that was debited. And now we've allocated the sales receipt down here, which has a transaction number of 36. Okay, and that has been credited to the customer ledger account. Okay, so you see you've got your debit and your credit. And this column here, OS, stands for outstanding. There's no longer anything outstanding there, so this invoice has been paid in full. It is no longer outstanding. However, we do have two other transactions outstanding. We have basically an invoice for 1175, but then we have a credit note offsetting that for 175. So the actual balance owed to us by Mr. Jackson is £1,000. Okay, let's go back to the bank. Actually, just before I come out of there, make sure you always unhighlight. If you highlight any customers to look at their activity, make sure you unhighlight it so it just doesn't affect any reports or any work that you do later. Let's just go to bank, and we're going to continue entering the rest of those receipts. Right, okay, so we're now going to move on to part B of task 8, and we're going to now be posting check payments to our supplier ledger. Okay, so we're paying our suppliers now. So it's the same process, except this time we're going to be going to the supplier, we're going to be entering payments through the bank to the supplier ledger. So we just want to go to bank and then select the supplier button on the bank account toolbar, and that brings up our supplier payment bank current account screen. Okay, it looks slightly different, but the principle is the same. We need to check that we're in the correct bank account, that we're allocating the payments we're making to the correct bank account, so that's the bank current account. In the same way as with other screens within Sage, we can always use these little arrow drop-down menus to select other accounts. So we could select another bank account if we're making the payment out of petty cash, for example. But we're going to stick with the bank current account. We need to enter the date that we made the payment or sent out the check. So, okay, so let's go back to the question. We made the payment on the 25th of April. Okay, so we need to enter that date as the date of payment. And the check number, so our reference is going to be 100602, and the amount was for 3525. Okay, and the invoice that we paid was invoice number 5674. Okay, so we're going to be selecting the account for Ernst & Young and looking for invoice 5674 within the ledger. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to come over to Payee now. So this is where we're going to select our supplier account. Okay, so I'm going to select my supplier account here. So again, we can just enter the first initial of the account reference, which in this case will be E for Ernst & Young, and we can see that comes up straight away. Okay. Just make sure you do enter the check number, or if you're paying by electronic transfer, the electronic transfer reference. Okay. Again, do not enter anything here, leave that blank, so leave that as 0. And we want to look for the invoice that we're paying. Okay. So we actually want to enter our payment here. So this is our invoice that we're paying, 5674. We can see that there. So I just want to select this cell, and are we paying in full? Well, the amount is for 3525. Yes, we've paid it in full. So again, we can come down to the Pay in Full button here and just select that to pay the invoice in full. Okay, again, just check all your details, check your date, the bank account, the reference, the amount, and once you're happy those are correct, you can save that entry. Okay, again, just to show you how that impacts on the supplier ledger account, if we go to suppliers, and look for the Ernst & Young account, we highlight the Ernst & Young supplier ledger account, we can again select the activity button, and we can see here what's actually been occurring within the account itself. So we had a purchase invoice, a PI, that was entered, okay, dated 23rd of April. We have the invoice number there. And then we've got our PP, our purchase payment, which was paid on the 25th of April. Okay, so again, in this case, because it's we've got a supplier ledger, we credited the liability, so we owed money to our supplier account. So we had a credit. So we, as I say, that was a liability that we owed. And now we've paid that off, so we have debited the supplier ledger account. So of course when we paid this transaction here, we paid that amount, transaction number 41, we would have credited bank and debited the supplier ledger account, which we've done here. So I'm just going to show you how that's impacted the bank actually. So if we look at this transaction number 41, that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be just confirming that double entry, credit bank, debit supplier ledger account. Okay, so you can see the debit here. Now if I just close that down and I go to bank, okay, and let's just have a look here. If I double click on the bank current account, we're just going to have a look at the activity that's occurred within the bank current account. So if I select the activity tab, let's have a look down. Let's look for that transaction number, that Sage transaction number, to find the transaction, and here it is here, number 41, conveniently of course the last one that we entered. So yeah, so this is this payment we've just made. Now we can see there that's our check number, so again we can use that to confirm it's the right entry that we're looking at. And here's our credit, so you can see there the bank account has been credited in accordance with the double entry. Okay, so let's continue posting the rest of those payments, and then we'll look at printing out the reports. Okay, so you'll note here we haven't actually paid this in full, the payment is actually a part payment, so we've underpaid that slightly. Okay, actually what we need to do here, you'll note that there's a credit note that's been entered as well. So we've actually been given a credit note in relation to this invoice. There was an overcharge. So what we can do here is we can allocate the credit note within the payment. So I'll just delete that. Now, so what we can do is we go pay in full, basically select pay in full 2350, and then pay in full this credit note as well. You'll notice that our overall payment that's going to be posted to the bank is actually 223250, which is the amount that we've paid. Okay, so just check those details are correct. Effectively what we've done is we've allocated the credit note to the invoice, giving us a payment of 223250. Once you check those details are correct and you're happy, then we can save. Okay, so once we've done that, we've now been asked to print out an aged creditors report. An aged creditors report. Okay, so this is basically going to show us how much we owe our suppliers. So if a manager ever comes up to you and they say, you know, who do we owe, what do we owe our suppliers, or what do we owe this particular supplier account, for example, in this case, maybe possibly what do we owe BT, you can run an aged creditors report, and that should give you the breakdown of the invoices that are still outstanding. Okay, in order to do this, we need to go to the supplier ledger. So if you select suppliers, and then we need to select the report button within the supplier toolbar. So we just need to go to reports there. So if I select reports, we now have our supplier report screen comes up, and we just need to have a look at the different age creditor reports. So again here we've got a little plus sign, so we can just select that, and we're asked to print, we're actually asked to print a summary. So we want to look for age creditors analysis summary. Okay, so this is the one here. This is the report we want to select. So this will give us a summary of the outstanding balances. So if I double click on that, now I can either double click on it, or I can just highlight it and then select generate report. Okay. So I can generate report. Always make sure that you're on preview. We don't want to print it out straight away. It's always best to preview your documents before you start printing them out, because you can correct any errors beforehand. Okay, so I'm going to generate that report. Okay, now here again we have our criteria values that it's asking us to enter. Now we can do this to customize the report. for example, by date or by account. You should be familiar with that from the previous exercise. We're just going to just leave it as it is. We're going to have a look at everything. So we can just select OK. Okay, it doesn't look like we have a age creditors report there, no, and we don't, because actually everything has already been paid, so we have nothing outstanding, so there's nothing to show on that report, so that's fine, so that's okay. So we're now just going to move on to the next part, which is print out an aged debtors report. Okay, so we now need to go to the customer ledger. Just remember that debtors ledger, customer ledger, it's the same thing, just different terminology. So if we now go to reports again, okay, and we're looking for the aged debtors report. Okay, again there's a plus sign, so we can just click on that to have a look at the various other reports that are available within that folder. And we're asked to print out a detailed aged debtors report. So this is the report here that we're looking for. Aged debtors analysis detailed. So again, I can generate that report. Make sure you're on preview beforehand. So it's going to generate. Okay, again, we can customize our criteria values per customer account or per date. We're just going to select OK. Okay, so that gives us our aged debtors analysis. So let's just have a look and see what's in here. Okay, so we've got our invoices, looking at Howard Green account, the first account there. Now these are our customers that owe us money. So we've got one here in period 2. So if we're working on 30-day credit terms, that's actually gone into sort of over 30 days due, so coming into the sort of the 60 days period. So we might want to look at chasing for that payment. It's quite a lot of money to be outstanding, and it's now drifting into sort of over the credit term limit. So we want to start chasing that debt. We have another 2. Okay, well, okay, yeah, falling into the 30-day credit period. You might want to keep an eye on those and start requesting, when payment's going to be made. We have a credit note here. Okay, now just to tidy up the report, what we might want to do is just allocate that credit note to the invoice. Now, per the reference, that was for an incorrect charge on invoice 6788. So that's just this invoice here. So we want to allocate that credit note to this invoice. So I'll show you how to do that once we've finished looking at this report. Okay, and again, coming down, so let's have a look. Yeah, so overall the balance outstanding on that account is given to us here. Okay, so that's our balance on that account. Moving down to the next account, we've got the Jackson account. Now, they don't actually owe us anything, but yet we've got these balances outstanding. So, well, that's a balance that was on an invoice. Okay, so you remember actually we only received £1,000 for invoice 6790. The reason that they only paid £1,000, on the face of it, it might have looked like they'd underpaid the invoice, but actually it was because we'd actually overcharged them. So we had issued a credit note so they only owed us £1,000. So again, to tidy up the report, we can just allocate that credit note to that invoice. So we want to tidy that up. Okay, and then coming down a little bit further, we can see we've got seafares. Okay, so both in period 1. Again, you just need to check your credit terms to determine how serious it is, whether you want to start chasing those payments or give them a little bit more time. Certainly when they start drifting into period 2, period 3, you need to start taking it seriously. It's always a good idea to, before payment is due from a customer, to sort of send them a gentle reminder, possibly a week before, 7 to 10 days before a statement, just to remind them that payment is falling due, so you don't get too many late payments coming in. Okay, and then you'll see here at the bottom we've got our total. So overall we are owed something like, well, over £218,000. Okay, right. And yeah. Okay, so let's just look at tidying up that report before we print it. And again, actually, we're not going to be printing out reports here, we're going to be PDFing them. So you can PDF it and save it to your memory stick for this exercise. Okay, so I'm just going to close that down, and we're going to go to bank. Now, how we allocate, if you've got an outstanding credit note on a customer or a supplier account, it works the same way, and you need to allocate it to an invoice, you can go to bank, and then we're going to, and then select the appropriate ledger. So in this case it's the customer ledger, so we want to select the customer button within the bank account. And the first account was actually Howard and Green. So if we pull up the Howard and Green account, now in this case it's going to be effectively an overall zero balance, zero amount going through. So nothing should go through the bank account. It's just a case of cancelling out effectively. So we've got here a £235 credit note that we want to allocate. So we're going to be allocating this credit note here to this invoice. Okay. So we do that basically by, we come to our credit note and we can pay that in full, okay, because that's for 235, and then we just want to come into the receipt column here and the cell next to the invoice. Okay, and we're just going to enter, just manually type in 235 and then tab that across. Again, you'll see what happens. Actually the amount is zero. Effectively it's just a cancelling out exercise to clean the report and take this sort of credit note out of the outstanding column, and then we can save. So if I close that down, it's not actually a new entry. I'm going to go to the customer ledger just to show you the effect on the actual ledger. I'm going to highlight Howard and Green and select the activity button. Okay, now you'll see here we have our credit note, SC. Okay, that was our credit note, but it's no longer in the outstanding column. Obviously we don't want too many credit notes outstanding. They should be allocated immediately to the invoice that they relate to. So then the amount outstanding, in fact you'll see here the difference here. So the actual invoice was for 23,500, but the actual amount outstanding is 23,265 due to this invoice that's been allocated. Okay, so it just helps to make sure that you're chasing the customer for the correct amounts, and also tidies up your report. Okay, so we now just wanted to obviously tidy up the Jackson account as well. So if I go back to bank and I select customer, and this time I'm going to enter J, pick up the Jackson account. Again, we just want to clean this up here. We don't have those amounts aren't outstanding, so we can pay in full and pay in full, and you'll see ultimately again it's a zero, overall zero balance, and then select save. Okay, and if I go back to the customer ledger and I highlight the Jackson account and select activity, we can see we have now nothing outstanding, nothing's in the outstanding column, so that's been tidied up. So again, it's going to sort of save space on your report when you print it out. You know, there is no need really to have those two transactions on that report, as the balance is zero. Nothing's owed there. Okay, just unhighlight that so it's clean for when we go back. Right, okay, so just going back to the question, okay, it's just asked which customer has underpaid. Okay, so I just want you to have a look at the customer report and see whether or not one of the customers has underpaid, and if they have, do they have a good reason? You know, is there a reason why they only paid us this amount and not the full amount of the invoice? So if you'd just like to have a look at your aged debtors report and email me the answer to that question. Task 9. Okay, we're now going to start entering petty cash and petty cash payments through the petty cash bank account within Sage. So first of all, what we have here is we're going to be using what is called the impressed system for petty cash. Now some of you might have heard of that already, but just to explain how it works, how an impressed system works, I'll just bring that up onto a Word document for now. Okay, now an impressed system is a type of financial accounting system, and it's mainly used for operating what is known as a petty cash float. So that's effectively cash on hand. Okay, so you might have a tin with, you know, £100 in it or £200 in it, and that's used to pay for things like maybe tea and coffee for the staff, or stamps, sort of small cash items. And obviously we need to account for that because there will be VAT involved, possibly input VAT that can be reclaimed on your VAT return, and it needs to be incorporated into the accounts and the financial statements. It is cash that is held, so that cash is an asset for your business, a current asset. Okay, so an impressed system's main characteristics is that it's for a fixed amount, as I said, you know, it could be for £100, £200, or maybe even, you know, £1,500, but it's cash on hand. It's for sort of small items, smaller value items. And then this amount, as you pay out, so you'll have your £200 petty cash float that's in a locked tin somewhere, and you'll be paying out money for possibly stamps or tea and coffee. As money is handed out to go and buy the stamps, for example, a petty cash voucher will need to be completed and authorised. Okay, in order to authorise that payment, there needs to be controls over the petty cash float, just as with any other asset within the business. So there'll be petty cash vouchers that will need to be filled out stating what was paid, what the money was for, and those petty cash vouchers will need to be authorised as well. Ideally, you want to also take the receipt that you receive when the payment is made and attach it to the petty cash voucher. So as money is going out at the end of a particular period, now it could usually weekly or possibly monthly, what you'll need to do is you'll need to top up the float back to 200. So we'll see how that works in task 9. So effectively, what we will be doing is expenses are entered into the petty cash ledger and deducted from the float, the original balance. Okay, and then as payments go out, the petty cash balance is then reimbursed via the current bank account to bring your petty cash float back up to the fixed amount or the original amount. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at the question. Now, first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to transfer money into our petty cash account. Okay. So we're going to sort of set up our petty cash float and transfer money from our current bank account into our petty cash account. So we have money in there to pay for various items. So if I come into Sage, we want to go to Bank, and what we're doing here is we're simply going to transfer money from our bank current account to our petty cash account. So we just need to select the transfer button within the bank account. Okay, that brings up our bank transfer screen, and you'll see here it's defaulted to our bank current account. Okay, we're going to transfer money from there into our petty cash. So it's going account from to, if we just go onto the drop down menu and select our petty cash. Okay, we could put in some description again, just so we know. So if we enter a description, we can say it's petty cash, maybe even enter the date. Well, they will have it anyway. If we just put petty cash in there, and then the reference, what we need to do for the reference is we need to go into enter the check number will need to go in there. And again, of course, make sure you've got the date correct and the actual amount that we're transferring will be entered into here. Okay, so if I enter the check number, you'll see there on the exercise it's 100600. We just want to enter some sort of a description, so we say it's petty cash. Okay, the date we're given is the 2nd of April. And the amount is for 200. Okay, so just check those details are correct and then save. Okay, and then we're going to do another transfer again. Okay, so again, we just select the petty cash. This time our check reference is 100604. Again, we can enter our description. The date is the 23rd of April 2013, and the payment value this time is £50. Okay, so again, just check those details are correct and then save. Okay, so you can see here that our float has been brought up to 400, so that might be our petty cash float that we keep of £400. What we're going to do now is we're now going to start making payments out of our account. Okay, so the first payment that we're going to make is that we're going to enter is this one here. So that's for a train fare. Now, you know, when I was talking about the Impress system, I mentioned that voucher numbers need to be completed. So this is that's what we're going to use as our reference. So our petty cash voucher number here is 65. The amount was for £96, and the VAT rate is actually 0 rated. So we need to select the tax code within Sage for 0 rated VAT items, and our nominal code is going to be 7400. So we can just enter that now. So this time we need to be careful. The payments we're going to be making are going to be from the petty cash account. These are petty cash payments, so we need to make sure we've selected the petty cash bank account. And then we're just going to select the payment button within the bank. Okay, now the payment bank payment screen has come up. So again, just check you're in the right bank account. Petty cash, that's fine. We're going to enter the date for the first transaction. The reference is going to be the petty cash voucher number. The nominal code is 7400. You notice that's for travel. Now we just come into details. We just need to enter the description, which is train fare. Okay, and then we enter the net amount, which is 96. And you'll remember that the tax code needs to be 0 rated, so we need to select the code that we use for 0 rated VAT items, which is T0. We just select OK, and then go to the next line and then to the next transaction. So we'll just continue. If we continue entering those transactions, we can then stop for a quick break and move on to task 10 and 11. Remember to use your F6 key if you need to copy any details in the line above. Okay, now just remember the amounts here are inclusive of VAT, so just take care with this transaction. We don't want to add VAT on. That £36 includes VAT, so we need to calculate the net. Okay, so we can just come down and select the Calc Net button, or you could select the F9 key on your keyboard. Okay, again here remember this is standard rated and it's inclusive of that, so we need to calculate the net. Okay, just make sure you're picking up the correct nominal codes as well. Okay, now this one is exempt, so again remember to select the correct VAT code for exempt items. Okay, just check your entries are correct and then you can save. Okay, and you can see here now that our petty cash balance has been reduced. Okay, I think it's time for a quick break, so you can just take a quick break to get a drink, and then we will move on to task 10 and 11 in part 5